Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi wa sahbihi wa azwajihi wa zurriyati ajma'in. We are continuing reading of Allama Iqbal's Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam, and we had stopped. Today we are going to start here. It is the mysterious touch of the ideal. It is the mysterious touch of the ideal that animates and sustains the real. Ideal and the real. And through it, that is through ideal, alone we can discover, through it. So probably is talking about by it he is referring to real. And through it alone we can discover and affirm the ideal. So that's basically the Hegelian point that reality is an expression of an externalization of the ideal, and by ideal we mean spirit or whatever it is, or mind. As it is, we looked at a session on Hegel's philosophy. Now with Islam, the ideal and real are not opposing forces. Which cannot be reconciled. So reality and idea are not opposing forces which cannot be reconciled, because reality is the expression of ideal. And if there is a seeming opposition between real and ideal, that's because the idea hasn't expressed itself fully. So that opposition can eventually be reconciled in the sense that when we see that ideal is improving its expression and externalization with the passage of time. The life of the ideal consists not in total breach with the real. It's not a total breach because real is the expression of ideal, but since the real is only incomplete and inadequate expression of the real or the ideal, that's why if there is a breach, that breach is partial. So the life of the ideal consists not in total breach with the real, which would tend to shatter the organic wholeness of life. Organic wholeness of life. That's also a Hegelian metaphor, because the self-expression or self-development or self-externalization of the ideal through history can be understood as, we did touch on this at some point when we were looking at Hegel's conception of finite and infinite. But the life of the ideal consists not in the total breach with the real, which would tend to shatter the organic wholeness of life. Organic wholeness of life. Of life. The life of the ideal not in total breach with the real, which would tend to shatter the organic wholeness. Yeah. So, as we saw in Hegel idea, is externalizing itself. So reality is, in a sense, concrete idea, expression of idea. But incomplete expression. Um, and this can be an idea taken separately from reality or this concrete expression is a mere idea. So there's no idea apart from real, except that it is there in the form of unactualized potential, which will come to fore with the passage of time. That's why the metaphor of and it's really for Hegel not a metaphor. It's actually a reality of the organic wholeness is apt in the sense that it can be seen as and there also Hegel's Aristotelian heritage comes to fore. The relationship between the idea or the ideal and the spirit and the real can be understood on the simile of seed to a tree. Because in a sense T is already present there in the seed as a potential. And different phases of the development of this seed into a tree can be seen as incomplete actualization of that potential, which finally become fully actual here. And then obviously this journey ends. Similarly for Hegel, idea is like a seed and it externalizes itself and develops into a tree in different phases of tree. Eventually it will become fully grown tree and that's when seed will be fully actualized. And the life is organic whole in this very sense that everything in the world is basically connected to that seed as a potential. So that's why cosmos, the universe is a whole in that sense. And in that very sense it is infinite, because Hegel defined infinite as that which doesn't have anything beyond it. Everything is it's not limited by anything else. Okay. So the life of the ideal consists not in a total breach with the real, which would tend to shatter the organic wholeness of life into painful opposition, but the perpetual endeavor of the ideal to appropriate the real. So it's expressing itself, and it isn't able to fully express itself, so it tries again, and so that's the historical dialectic. So endeavor of the ideal to appropriate the real with a view of eventually to absorb it. So previous phases of the life of a plant from seed can be seen as being absorbed into its forthcoming phases, to absorb it, to convert it into itself. So seed can be idea in different phases. So in a sense, this is being converted into the ideal, in the sense that seed is developing itself fully. So when it comes from this to this, so it basically absorbs this to become this, and so on, to convert it into itself and illuminate its whole being. Actually, it is the sharp opposition between the subject and the object, the mathematical without and the biological within, that impressed Christianity. So obviously, as we saw, he's reading both Christianity and Islam in Hegelian time. So, and what Iqbal is saying, and obviously for Hegel, Christianity was the final religion, so the highest stage of religion. So he didn't talk about Islam, or if he did, not in these terms. So these are Iqbal's additions, but the idea is totally Hegelian. So he's saying that Christianity erected these oppositions between subject and object, between real and ideal, between body and mind. And it did this because it didn't realize the Hegelian point that object is expression of subject, and real is the expression of ideal, and body is the expression of mind, and so forth. And they are all, everything in the universe is organically related as different phases of tree and different variation of trees are to a seed. And obviously he says that Islam realizes that, so Islam is superior to Christianity in that sense, because it hits the Hegelian marks. It is the opposition between the subject and the object, the mathematical without, that is the real, and biological within. Here it is. See, that seed metaphor comes again. The idea is basically biological within, that impressed Christianity. Islam, however, faces the opposition with a view to, like Hegel, with a view to overcome it. So in Hegel, the engine of historical development is that idea is like a seed, and it's trying to express itself, externalize itself, or fulfill itself, but it cannot fully, whenever it externalizes itself or realizes itself, its realization is incomplete. And that incomplete realization creates an opposition with its potential, and those potentials are overcome in another attempt to realize itself more fully, and so on. So that's how history progresses, or evolve or develops. So for Iqbal, that's what Islam teaches us as well. Okay. The essential difference in looking at a fundamental relation, that is between Christianity and Islam, determines the respective attitude. respective attitudes. The essential difference in looking at the fundamental relation between ideal and real determine the attitude of these great religions. So, like Hegel, they are great religions, that they are human attempt to understand the universe toward the problem of human life in its present surrounding. Both demand the affirmation of the spiritual. See, now you go back to spiritual in man, with the difference only that Islam recognizing the contact of the ideal with the real. Islam realizing the Hegelian point that ideal and real are basically the expression of the same reality, says yes to the world of matter. Obviously, if now yes, saying yes to the world of matter, meaning that it doesn't unlike Christianity, it doesn't abhor or doesn't shun the material world. In fact, it sees the material world as the expression of the ideal. So a material world is, in a sense, the ideal, even though it is incomplete. So the completing this material world becomes the mission and points the way to master it. Master the material world. And since human beings, according to Hegel, are the highest self-expression of the life of the idea or the spirit, that's why their mastering is basically is a form of self-expression as well, with a view to discover the basis of realistic regulation of life. So basically, he is marrying here Hegel with modern science, and that's all Islam. So there are two projects. There are three projects that Iqbal has mixed up here. First is the Christian and Islamic project of salvation, and explaining our relationship with this present world and how our life here is related to the eternal life. That's the problem of Islam, if you want to call it a problem, and the problem of all Abrahamic religion, which is basically Islam and Christianity and Judaism are its distorted forms. There's no doubt about that. And the second is the Hegelian problem of the relationship between mind and matter, whether at the human level or at the cosmic level. And third is the scientific problem, the problem of modern science, which is to know the world in order to master it, so we can subjugate this world to human will. And obviously last point 2 points have nothing to do with the first point. And it is reading this first point in terms of second and third point, which is what makes Allama Iqbal's efforts here part and parcel of Muslim modernism. This is basically reading and redefining Islam and Christianity in terms of modernity, in terms of Hegelian philosophy, and in terms of modern science and its search to master the universe and subjugate it to human will. On the other hand, Hegelian philosophy and like Hegelian philosophy is basically um, the rejection of the creation, the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created both matter and mind, and their interconnection is defined by the fact that they are both creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the world and this cosmos is finite, it is not infinite. And the project of modern science to master the universe and subjugate it is a Iblisi project, because it is Iblis who tried to persuade Adam alayhi salam to build a kingdom in this world which will never end, and to seek eternity through mastering, through eating the fruit of the forbidden fruit, the fruit of the transgression of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Anyway, so let's go back. So yeah, recognizing the contact of the ideal with the real and say yes to the world of matter, yes to the world of matter, materialism, and points the way to master it and subjugate it to human will so it can regulate the life, become the master of this life and this universe, which is the Hegelian project as well as the project of modern science, not the project of Islam and Christianity. Okay, that's a good point to stop. We'll continue inshallah.